是翼龙，这是剑龙。你来计算，再穿。
好像我
Okay, you wanna take it? Okay, that's okay. Get there.
这个。
all the moments and regrets. I've been searching empty alleys, called your name out in the prairies. The sunlight shades, but what remains is the shade of you. I gotta you, oh Lord. The memories are here, but you are gone.